Hey everyone, Tom Rafferty. I'm going to talk today about toxic bosses, specifically where no chain of command is involved. So, as a background, in a military structure, chain of command is very defined and very present. There is a person in charge, there is a person below them who is the second in charge, and then there's many rungs on the ladder below them. And each person has a job, each person has a different responsibility, but everyone in that organization, every rung on that ladder is giving the same message downward. The top person gives a message, the second rung on the ladder gives that same message, the third rung on the ladder gives that same message. Everyone from the top down gives the same message, has the same narrative. Everyone's pulling in the same direction. But in the civilian world, it's often not like that. In the civilian world, often the president of a company or the CEO of a company or the owner of the company or, pick your leadership title of the top person in a company, often has a very different idea, a very different message, a very different vision from the vice president or the second in command. Very often in a non-military organization, there's a bit of chaos in the chain of command. So let's use a military ship as an example. You have the commanding officer of the ship, that's the number one person in charge of that ship, and you have the executive officer, who's the number two person in charge of that ship. The commanding officer is referred to as the CO, the executive officer is referred to as the XO. On a military ship, you don't hear the CO and the XO disagreeing with each other, ever. Maybe behind closed doors they do as they work things out among themselves. But among the crew and the officers, you will never hear the CO and the XO of a ship bad-mouthing each other or disagreeing with each other. But in the civilian world, it's often not like that. In the civilian world, you might hear the top person in an organization badmouth the number two person in an organization. I've had the president of a company pull me over in the hallway and badmouth the vice president of that company to me and tell me all the things that this person is doing wrong and all the reasons why this person isn't good at their job. And I'm thinking, I don't want to hear this. If this person is doing their job badly, it's your responsibility. It's your fault. You need to correct it. You either need to get them pulling the rope in the same direction as you, or you need to fire them. What you don't need to be doing is pulling over your people in the hallway and using them as, a priest or a bartender or a therapist and venting your feelings to them. That's the last thing you need to be doing in an organization. You need to make sure your underlings are on the same page as you, delivering the same message of vision and leadership as you. I've talked with co-workers who were prior military and they all agree with me. Not everyone sees it, but when it's pointed out to them, it becomes glaringly obvious. And then they start kind of missing that chain of command structure that they saw in the military. You kind of feel secure in that system. You feel like your leadership, whether they're right or they're wrong, they're at least all going in the same direction. One thing that a non-military leader might do, and I've seen this done, it's been done to me, is let's say it's the top person in a company, the top rung on the ladder, and they have a disagreement with something that was done, a job, a task, a project, the way a project was done by the next three rungs down from that person on the ladder. So number one rung has a disagreement with rung number 2, 3, and 4. And they don't like the way that number 2, 3, and 4 carried out a particular task. Well, rungs number 3 and 4 were only doing what number 2 approved of or directed them to do. So rung number 1 only should tell rung number 2 the problem. Rung number 1 should only correct rung number 2. Rung number 2 should then correct rung number 3 and 4, or rung number 2 corrects 3, who corrects 4. But the idea of rung number 1 calling in rungs 2, 3, and 4 to a meeting, or doing this on another meeting in front of a bunch of other people in the organization, correcting them, hanging them out to dry, chiding them, lecturing them for something that the person above them approved of, is really bad leadership. In the civilian world, you get contradictory commands pretty often. You will hear one message from the president or the CEO or the owner, and you will hear quite a different message from the vice president or the CFO or the COO or a manager. And it's clear that they're not reading from the same sheet of music. The underling is really trying to work around the superior. So the vice president and the president might not get along at all. They don't hide that fact. And the president gives a talk, gives some guidance, and everyone nods their head in the meeting or on the video call. And then when it's dismissed in these smaller little groups, the vice president will say, well, we're not doing that, we're doing this. And everyone below them is left to scramble to wonder who they're going to get in trouble with. Is the president going to find out and I'm going to get in trouble? Am I not going to do what the vice president told me and I'm going to get in trouble? It's a very chaotic, very dysfunctional, very unhealthy dynamic when there is no chain of command or when the chain of command is broken. But if you are a leader, if you are the president, the CEO, the owner of a company, make sure your vice president, your second in command, your COO, your CFO, your CIO, your managers, your supervisors are all on the same page as you. And it's not just a matter of seeing them nod their heads in a meeting. A lot of times once they leave that meeting, they're not nodding their heads anymore. They're involved in working around you because maybe you're very hard to work with. Maybe you're very hard to disagree with. Maybe they can't speak their mind to you without you reacting badly to it. Maybe you don't take criticism well. So maybe they're in a position where they have to nod their head yes to you and act like they're carrying out your wishes and your orders and your vision. But once they leave the room or once they're off the video meeting, they have to act in a practical sense to actually get the job done. So if the chain of command is broken, responsibility always starts at the top. You have to look at yourself in the mirror if you're the CEO or the owner or the president and really examine whether your people feel safe, feel confident to disagree with you, feel safe and feel confident to have a candid conversation with you. Do you put them down? Are you sarcastic? Do you say things to them in the office that you wouldn't dare say to a person in a bar or in a back alley? Many bosses, many managers, many CEOs use the safety of the office to be a bit hostile. You have to treat people as you would if you were vulnerable. Just because you're not very vulnerable in that position, you can't become a tyrant. That's the worst of human nature right there. When you act out cruelly or in a mean way because you have the social structure around you that usually prevents a person from reacting badly to it because they'll lose their job. You have to treat people the same way in the office as you would in a bar or a back alley. You can't treat people badly. In the military, there's a strict chain of command. You don't hear the executive officer of a ship or a military base bad-mouthing or contradicting the commanding officer of that ship or military base. You don't hear the commanding officer bad-mouthing the executive officer. They toe the same line, and it creates security and peace and comfort for the crew. So that's about it for today. Chain of command is critical in the military and in the civilian world, but unfortunately, it's really overlooked and neglected in the civilian world. So if you're a leader, take a good hard look at your chain of command, and if it's broken, fix it, and I think your organization will be healthier for it. Thank you. Please subscribe to this channel. Bye.